Thanks for joining us on 9 News Plus. I'm Chris Bianchi. A few months ago, I spoke with one of the last known living Holocaust survivors in Colorado. Jack Adler shared with me his incredible story of survival at the Auschwitz concentration camp and at the ghetto in Lodz, Poland. His story of survival is truly unforgettable. Here's my interview with Holocaust survivor Jack Adler.
I was born in Poland, Pabianice, the city of 42,000, of which close to 9,000 were Jewish people. My immediate family numbered 6. My parents, 2 sisters, brother and I. Adding to it my extended family when the Nazis occupied Poland, which was the first week of September 1939. We numbered close to 80. The first week of September, the Nazis occupied Pabianice, and almost immediately they posted notices directed towards the Jewish population, which stated in part, effective immediately, no Jewish person is allowed to step outdoors unless he or she wears 2 yellow stars of David attached to their clothing, one in the front, one in the back. Effective immediately, no Jewish child is allowed to attend any public schools, and all Jewish houses of worship must be shut down. I remember watching the destruction of the synagogue, where my family and I used to attend, to be destroyed primarily by the local population, being stripped completely of its interior and converted into a stable for horses. And the beatings and tortures began almost immediately. Nazi soldiers, officers would enter Jewish neighborhoods and at random select men and women, demonizing them, dehumanizing them, stereotyping them, beating, and so on. And this was a daily routine. In February of 1940, we were moved into a ghetto in the city of Pabianice. The ghetto was an open ghetto, meaning there was no barbed wire surrounding it. However, we had to obey a very strict curfew within the ghetto. We could only move within the ghetto during daylight hours, cross the main street, which divided the ghetto, twice daily, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. In the ghetto, the Nazis formed a Jewish committee whose primary functions were to provide the Nazis with laborers upon request, to work outside of the ghetto, and to distribute the inhabitants of the ghetto the daily food ration, which on the average day consisted of a slice of bread and a bowl of soup. Within months after we were moved into the ghetto, people became ill. People died from malnutrition, disease. I lost my mother and brother in the ghetto of Pabianice. Around beginning of May of 1942, we were notified by the German authorities that our ghetto is going to be liquidated. And that will take place on May 16, 1942. And they divided the inhabitants of the ghetto into 2 groups, A and B. On the 16th, we were told to be in front of our dwellings at 2 p.m. sharp, May 16. Dozens of Nazi officers came, and they marched us all to the soccer field. When we arrived to the soccer field, it was divided right down the middle. Group A were told to move to the left, Group B to the right. Only then did we realize why we were divided into those 2 groups. In Group A, you found the old, the sick, and the young, whom the Nazis viewed as useless eaters because they cannot perform any slave labor for them. My little sister was in Group A. My father, older sister, and I were in Group E. In Group E, you found those the Nazis viewed as able-bodied men and women who could perform slave labor for them. Therefore, they can go on living a little bit longer. We stayed in the soccer field all through the night. It rained, and I remember it was very dark in the soccer field. Most of the lighting came from the headlights of the trucks as they started moving out people from Group A. I would say about midnight, a couple Nazi officers came up to Group B and asked for volunteers to pick up the debris that was left behind by those who were shipped out from Group A, like articles of clothing, pieces of paper. Hoping to see my little sister again, I volunteered. Each volunteer was given a baby carriage. In those days, they had those deep baby carriages. And I slowly moved from Group B towards Group A, bending down, picking up pieces of paper, articles of clothing, not to attract any attention. And when I got close enough towards Group A and it was dark in the soccer field, I started calling my little sister's name out. And some of the people who were still in Group A repeated calling her name. And to my surprise, she was still there. She came running towards me and I motioned to her, "Don't do anything until it's dark again and try to get in the baby carriage." And she did so. And I slowly moved back towards Group B where my father and older sister were waiting to hear from me. Once again, picking up pieces of paper, articles of clothing, however, this time to cover her up. Because if the Nazis would have realized what we were up to, they would kill us on the spot. And when I got close enough to my father and sister, I told them she's in the baby carriage. And when it was dark in the soccer field, they took her out. The following day, we found out what happened to those in Group A who were the young, and the ill. All of them perished in the extermination camp at Chelmno, Poland, the very same day. Group B were moved to the ghetto of Lodz, L-O-D-Z. The ghetto of Lodz was a huge ghetto because they sent people from smaller towns into the ghetto of Lodz. So I would say in its peak, the population in the ghetto of Lodz exceeded 300,000. The ghetto of Lodz was surrounded by barbed wire. Every 10, 12 feet, there was an armed Nazi guard station to make sure no one escapes. Occasionally, people tried to escape. They were killed on the spot. In the ghetto of Lodz, the Nazis established all kinds of factories to assist them with the war machinery. I was assigned to work in a straw factory. We were ordered to manufacture straw shoes to be worn by the German soldiers who were fighting the Soviet Union on the Eastern Front to keep their feet warm. Once again, the average daily food ration in the ghetto of Lodz consisted of a slice of bread and a bowl of soup. The bowl of soup, however, was given us at work, so many people who were too weak, too sick to work never received the second half of the daily food ration. In the ghetto of Lodz, people were dying by the thousands. People were taken out to extermination camps by the thousands, concentration camps by the thousands. When the ghetto of Lodz was being liquidated late summer 1944, there were less than 68,000 people left. Once again, we were notified the ghetto was being liquidated. However, this time, we were ordered to report to the railroad station. When we arrived at the railroad station, we were herded into boxcars, cattle cars, packed like sardines into a can, standing room only. Once a car was filled to its maximum capacity, the doors were sealed from the outside. We traveled to an unknown destination for about 2 days. And when we finally arrived at that unknown destination and the doors to the boxcars were opened, we were greeted by Nazi soldiers and officers with whips and dogs shouting at us, "Disembark at once, line up, 5 across, men separate from women, and march forward." We were also met what we turned out to be prisoners whose job was to take away whatever meager belongings one brought along with them. And they whispered to us, "When you march, look strong if you want to live. You just arrived at the Auschwitz-Birkenau extermination and selection camp." We marched forward for the selection process, which was being conducted by Dr. Joseph Mengele, also known as the Angel of Death, and his henchmen. When you approach them, they look you over. If you look strong, old enough to be able to perform slave labor, you were moved to their right again. And then the old, the sick, my little sister, whom I saved for a little over 2 years, were moved to the left. Those who were moved to the left were marched straight to the gas chambers, where they were gassed, and then the bodies were taken to the crematorium, where they were burned. My father and I remained in Auschwitz-Birkenau for about a week. Every day we had to go through a selection process where the Nazis selected prisoners to be sent to various camps to perform slave labor for them. After a week, my father and I were sent to the concentration camp of Kaufering, Germany, a camp under the jurisdiction of Dachau. My father and I were assigned to work at a construction site where the Nazis were building underground hangars for airplanes. The two of us were assigned to carry bags of cement. As cement arrived by rail, from the rail to the actual construction site, back and forth, 12 hours a day. If you didn't move fast enough to the likings of a guard, they would beat you. One sadistic guard took it the next step. He took like a stick, drove a nail through it. If you didn't move fast enough to his liking, he would hit you with that pointed nail in the neck. I still have a scar on my neck today. And if I weren't with my father, what he did, he tore off a piece of paper from a bag of cement, applied his saliva and pressed it against the wound. It finally stopped the bleeding. If I weren't with my father, I would have bled to death. We remained in Kaufering till about March of 1945, when I was separated from my father and taken to the main camp of Dachau. Being that the camp was under the jurisdiction of Dachau, occasionally as I marched to or from work, I would see my father, and all we could do is wave to each other. Around the latter part of March 1945, the Nazis allowed the International Red Cross to enter Dachau to distribute care packages, food packages, to the non-Jewish prisoners. Each group of about 25 prisoners had a capo, K-A-P-O, assigned to them. A capo was like a foreman. It was his job to make sure whatever assignment was given to his group of prisoners is being performed properly. The head of all the guards, all the prisoners, was an SS colonel. One day he called my capo in and ordered him to send him a young prisoner to keep his office clean. Being the youngest one in his group, he gave me that assignment, which was much easier. All I had to do was sweep the floor in his office, dust the furniture, and it was getting cold by then. He had a wood-burning stove. I had to make sure the fire keeps going. Daily, the first thing I would do in his office, when I come in the morning, sit on the floor, empty out the ashes from the wood-burning stove. And almost on a daily basis, within the ashes, I would find neatly wrapped in pieces of wax paper, pieces of bread, pieces of bacon the colonel would throw in for me to find, or else he would have thrown it into the garbage, something that helped to survive. But when we received the food packages, mind you, this was late March 1945. Even the German people had many food shortages. Sugar was one of them. And this package contained a little bag of sugar. So after the day I received the package, when we marched back to camp, one of the guards approached me and asked me, "Did you receive the food package?" I said, "Yes, sir." "Do you still have the bag of sugar?" I said, "Yes, sir." And when I told him I still had the sugar, he took out a big slice of bread from his duffel bag and showed it to me. He said, "If you give me the bag of sugar every day, you get a slice of bread like this." I looked at a big slice of bread. I said, "A little sugar won't help me. The slice of bread every day may." So I gave him the sugar. He gave me the slice of bread. So the next day, going back to work, I made sure I'm marching on the outside where he was guarding me so he could see me and give me a slice of bread as promised. After marching for a while, we marched, by the way, 4 groups of 500 each, 5 across. After marching for a while, I saw him look across each row of prisoners. I said, "He's looking for me." And he passed me by. I looked at him. He looks at me, and in German he says to me, "Was Mr. Haben? What do you want?" At first I thought maybe he didn't recognize me. I told him, I'm the one who gave you the sugar. You promised me a slice of bread every day. And when I told him this, he took the rifle off his shoulder with the rifle butt, hit me in my ribcage. He said, here's your bread. And I barely made it to the commanding officer's office. And when I did, as I indicated, first thing I did, sit on the floor, empty out the ashes from the wood-burning stove. When I completed doing it, I was so weak and in pain, I couldn't stand up, and I started to cry. And the commanding officer, who was an SS colonel, walked up to me. This was the first time in over 5 years, especially a high-ranking Nazi officer would talk to me like to a human being. He came up and in German he says, "Was ist los, meine Junge? What's wrong, my boy?" Even though I realized for a Jewish boy to inform on a Nazi guard to a superior officer, the consequences may be very harsh. But I was in so much pain, I didn't care what he does to me. And I told him what happened. And he in turn said, tonight when we fall in, before they would allow us to march back to camp after work, we had to fall in to be counted, to make sure no one escaped, no one was missing. He ordered me to point the guard out to him. Reluctantly, I did so. So marching back to camp, I marched in the middle of a group of 500, hoping the guard wouldn't see me. Nothing happened. The following day, going back to work, the same thing. I'm in the middle of a group of 500 marching. After marching for a while again, I could see him looking across each row of prisoners. I said to myself, this time he may hit me, beat me again, or kill me. Nobody would do anything to him. But to my surprise, as he saw me, he reached out and handed me a slice of bread. And when I came into the commanding officer's office, practically the moment I opened the door, he walked up towards me and said, "Did the guard give you any bread today?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Every day he's to give you a slice of bread as he promised you when you gave him the bag of sugar. If he fails to do so even one day, don't be afraid. You tell me, I'll deal with him." Even though he was a high-ranking Nazi officer, he was a decent human being caught up in the Nazi movement, as were, I'm sure, many other German people. We remained in Dachau until April 26th or 7th, 1945, when about 7,000 of us were marched out of Dachau. The march has been documented as the Death March. We marched all during daylight hours. At night we would sleep in the woods, but they would take a group and take them to the other side of the woods. They were given shovels in order to dig a big ditch. When the ditch was completed, they were ordered and others along with them to line up around the perimeter of the ditch, and they were gunned down. When we were liberated early in the morning, May 1, 1945, by the United States 3rd and 7th Army, under the command of General Dwight David Eisenhower and George Patton, there were less than 4,000 of us left. I wouldn't have made it one more day. Those who were unable to continue the march were not left behind alive. They were shot. I was immediately hospitalized in a newly formed displaced persons camp in Vierenwald, Germany. My hospitalization lasted about 3 months. When I was checked into the hospital, I weighed around 70 pounds. After the hospitalization was ended, I got a job with the UNRWA, the United Nations, who ran the displaced persons camp, as a mail deliverer, messengers, and so on. I was brought to the United States by the Jewish Children's Bureau in December of 1946 and placed to live in a wonderful foster home in Chicago, Illinois. First, I attended night school to learn the language. I finished high school, college. I proudly served in the United States Army during the Korean conflict. I got married. I have 2 wonderful children, 4 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. The Holocaust ended almost 80 years ago. What has humanity learned from the evil we call the Holocaust? Not much. Let's take a look around the world. Since the Holocaust ended, people were dying in the Middle East. Today, as I speak, in Ukraine, what's happening, people are dying. Evil is around. Humanity must rid itself of evil, because humanity will not survive. Humanity will continue to destroy itself unless humanity as a whole allows itself to be guided daily by the golden rule: do unto others as you like them to do unto you.